Okay, hey everybody, Tim Timmons here with another 10,000 minute experiment. We've got Amoy Dornice to my right.
Hello.
We've got Chris Cleveland to my left.
Yeah, we do.
Hey, really quick, every time you test my voice, how do you do it?
Tim. I don't even know if that was the same one.
I don't think so.
I'm always sitting at
No,
I'm
it's
sitting
like
at the
some sort
studio
of
at the chair going, hey, will you just test my mic? He always does the dumbest voice.
I don't,
It's me, it's Tim.
we're just trying to get someone who's a little more excited to be here than I am.
Yes, that's what you do. That's what you do.
Oh my goodness.
It's so stupid. Also, we are in my studio, and you know this is a great day because my air conditioning is broke,
Ooh, welcome to the club.
so it feels wonderful in here.
It's not bad though.
I can't
Yeah.
even tell.
Okay, no, that feels great. And we are talking to an amazing, amazing woman right now via the Zoom. She is in the Orange County, California. Everybody in the world, please give it up
my
for Miss
gosh.
Carol Timmons.
Woo!
Yay, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
And if you guys can't figure that out, Carol Timmons is my mom.
Yes, she is.
Yes.
So everybody goes, oh, you know, Carol. I'm like, yeah, the babe. She looks the same. I mean, you can kind of see her on Zoom. She looks the same as she's looked for
Forever.
many years.
Well, I just don't know why I have to age if he does.
What's that mean?
That was deep.
I'm sticking with 55, and you can be 45, but I'm.
Yeah. Mom, please
I
don't
like
give
it.
my age. That'd be really great. I'm 24.
I love it. Oh my goodness.
So that's my mom, everybody, and she has been my mom for a long time, for 24 years. Chris, you had a question right before we started about what she calls me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered if she called you Timothy or Tim, and my hunch was correct that it's Timothy.
Yeah.
Because I'm Christopher at home,
Yeah.
not Chris. Yeah.
You can call me Timothy anytime you want.
I call you both Tim and Timothy.
She does. In her letters that she writes me, it's Timothy.
Aww.
Yeah, this woman's pretty amazing, everybody. So I get, even living in Nashville now, I still get people that will write me on the Instagrams or the Facebook saying, your mom has saved my life, or whatever. And so many, I mean, that has been for years and years. So my mom's a shrink.
Thank you, Timothy.
If you can,
Shrink.
if you can see, she's a therapist.
I imagine there's some education behind that word.
A shrink?
Yeah.
I am officially an LMFT.
There we
Licensed
go.
marriage
Watch your mouth,
family
Mom.
therapist.
Okay. Oh yeah. Thank you.
Nice. I was like, that's a new one.
Yeah.
Whoa,
I
whoa,
was
whoa,
like,
whoa.
I want to know the details.
Yeah.
I love it. A licensed family marriage specialist.
Therapist.
Love it. Therapist.
Licensed marriage family therapist.
Got it.
LMFT. Yeah.
If you can get
That's
those correct.
awesome.
This is great.
Yeah, so my mom is, you kind of think that growing up with a woman who's one of them, you'd be kind of nervous that she's shrinking you all the time.
Yeah.
But she kind of wields it really well.
Thank you.
Yeah, you really do, Mom. It's a beautiful thing how you will speak or give thoughts when you're asked, and you kind of hold that loosely, and you're a great listener, and this is an incredible woman, everybody. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
You will be paid later, sweetie.
yes. So what's your most recent moral failure, Mom? You want to just go to there? I feel like it'd be a good thing to ask Mom. No?
I've started asking people that question.
No,
Yeah.
no.
You're rubbing off on me, Tim. I haven't asked my mom yet, but
Yeah. No, I'm not going to ask my mom that.
The wrong practice.
Yeah. So, you guys, I wanted to bring my mom on because we had a conversation last week, us three, when we were at lunch. We were at a terrific Mexican place, by the way. I'm always craving Mexican food out here because we don't have it like we have it in California.
Right. Yes.
And we found a spot, and let's just say it put some holes in some parts of my body that I didn't know were needed.
it just hit me just right. Hit me just right.
Is that your Yelp review?
But Tim,
Just put some holes, and I'm like, wait. Do I want to go there? Do I not want to
No,
go
what
there?
I meant in my heart. No, it was so good. But we were having this conversation. We're talking about grief. I've been walking through a lot of really difficult things in so many areas of my life, which I'm not going to actually really go too in depth in because it's not appropriate. But my marriage is wonderful, and my wife and family are great. There are just some really heavy things that I'm really mourning right now and grieving. And I've never really had to experience this kind of grieving in so many different areas.
Yeah.
And Moy, you've had so much experience in grieving your brother's death.
Yeah.
And Chris, you've had a lot of grief just in family stuff and in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And so as we're talking, Moy said something that just kind of rocked my world. She said, for the first 7 years of my grief, I tried to grieve really well. I tried to master it.
wow.
try to grieve with grace. I think I was trying to not overwhelm anyone with my grief, and I was trying to not discount God's character at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was just so numb to my pain for 7
Yes.
years because I was like, but
Yes.
he's good. And so like I try to trump my emotion with a truth I wasn't really experiencing
Oh, wow.
for 7 years.
But then you said,
Then I probably said, I want another taco. And then you said, nope, our budget.
no, you said grief just happens to you.
Oh, yeah.
And that rocked me. And I think in this season, I've been trying to grieve well and trying to do it well. I'm trying to love still in the midst of things. And yet it hit me. And Chris, we started getting into some of your stuff.
Yeah.
And we just said, we need to do one of these on grief.
Yeah.
And I thought, who better to talk about grief than my mom? She is just so, so wise beyond her 55 years. And I'm always going to my mom. All of us kids, and I've got 2 older sisters, and we're always going to my mom with questions or thoughts. And there's just always this beautiful wisdom of spirit stuff and psychology. And she has such a great blend of these two.
I love that.
You guys, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. It is such an honor to walk in this with you as we're trying to figure out how to join Jesus in our week, in the craziness and in the mundane. So thanks for jumping in. I also just wanted to say thank you specifically to Anne, Heather, Leanne, Lindsay, Diane, Lee, or Leah, could be Leah, and Lynn. All of you apparently have L's in your name. You guys are totally winning. So thank you for financially partnering with us. We are so thankful for that because this is not cheap, nor is it free. But hopefully this has actually been so encouraging to you that's why you're giving. So if this has been encouraging you, you can always go to 10,000minutes.com, 1000minutes.com, and in the upper right it says donate, or check out different places where you can get resources there. So we've decided to split this conversation up into 2 different episodes because it was seriously so good. Chris Moy and I have been texting each other just as friends, talking about the stuff we're learning on this. So I think you're going to love both of these. So get ready. And it's just hanging out with my mom. She's like the coolest. So here we go. So Mom, I wanted to bring you on to help us just even talk through. And I know there's so many people listening that are either walking through grief right now or have walked through grief or will be walking through grief in a week. And the other little thing is that grief is not just losing a loved one. It's not just these huge things. I mean, it's down to you had a hard relationship with a friend, or I mean, they're even the small little things that I would never think you need to grieve.
Right.
We actually might need to rethink our thinking on grieving.
Yeah.
So, Mom, there are 5 stages of grief. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
You want to just run through those?
Okay, yes. And let me just start by saying, please interrupt me at any point. I have some things I generally say about grief, and I will go through them as long as you let me talk. So,
Yes,
but
we have about 8 hours left, Moms, and we will interrupt you to make fun of each other at some point.
That's true.
So I want you to interrupt and ask questions and stop, and don't just say, "Oh, she needs to keep going."
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that fair?
Oh, that's
Yeah. So
healing.
bully her. Bully
Wow.
this woman. She's it's gonna be great.
Well, I started thinking about this. Timothy asked me to do this the other day, and so I thought,
That's me.
okay, I'll just write. And I wrote out 4 pages. Boom, boom. Just
wow.
wrote them out. So that's why I need for you to stop me because I'll just keep going. And I was remembering in my era, in my day, there was a very popular book when I was raising my family, and the title of it was Necessary Losses
Okay.
by Judith Viorst. And it's actually a classic at this point, even though it's, an old book by now. But her point was she was a few years older than I was at the time. She was in her 50s. I was in my 30s or so when I was reading the book. And her point was there are necessary losses in our lives. And the older we get, the more we will have them.
Wow.
We hope that we're going to go through life and just skip through on the freeway that we've planned. But there are all kinds of necessary losses. Children grow up and leave.
Yeah.
The very idea. We get older, and our bodies don't do the same thing as they did when we were younger. Friends come and go. People come and go in our lives. circumstances change. There are necessary losses. And it was a very lighthearted book. It was an entertaining book because she was just making fun of herself and all of us and what are the things that we're losing. And it was a delightful book to read. It wasn't like, oh gosh, I've got to read a book about losses. No, it was just fun. And she told stories on herself and made herself look, foolish. And so
Were you going to say stupid?
No, I was not going to say that.
Because, guys, that was a bad word in my house. Mom,
She looked at her
continue.
notes.
Sorry.
She
So
said,
sorry.
"Nah, I didn't
Don't say
write that
stupid.
She's a
down."
licensed professional. She doesn't say things like that.
Yeah, she's done this before, okay?
Okay, keep going, Mom. Sorry.
So anyway, so I was just thinking, and that book was for all of us to just come to grips with reality. And I think that's what grief is. It's coming to grips with reality.
Wow.
I think that reality is a hard thing. The opposite of reality is mental illness. So we don't really want to do that.
Wow.
We want to live in
Yeah.
reality.
That's right.
So that's, as a therapist, that's what I do a lot, is try to say in a kindly way, this is reality. We need to understand that, and let's get our feet on the ground and come to grips with that and move on.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah, and I was just thinking that grief applies to anything we lose, whether it's jewelry or important papers or your keys or a person or a pet or whomever.
Yeah.
Grief is losing something important. And the technical thing is deep sorrow. Deep sorrow regarding anything that's a trouble or an annoyance. And, sometimes, if it's really a grief, it's a deep sorrow. If it's a trouble or an annoyance, it's something like somebody says, well, don't give me grief over this decision.
Right.
Well, that's just another way to use that. But true grief that we're talking about is deep stuff.
Yeah.
I saw a quote on surviving grief, and I liked it, so I wrote it down. Cry whenever you need to. Scream, shout, lay on the floor, sob in the shower, be still, run, walk, listen, breathe, release your pain, throw away the map, be real, read, seek friendship, be vulnerable, don't fear being broken.
Wow. AKA live your life.
I know, I'm like exposed.
Yeah.
Whoa, jeez.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it this morning too, and it just came to me that because a picture's worth 1,000 words, we are all on the freeway of life, and we would just like to keep going 70 miles an hour.
Right.
But sometimes in our lane, there's a detour,
Yep.
and we don't like it because some of the other lanes don't have that stoppage, and they can just whiz on by. And that's annoying.
Yeah.
And we don't like to have a detour.
Yeah.
And so, yes, that's sort of an intro to the 5 stages of grief. So you've
Yeah.
heard of the 5 stages of grief?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you know where they started, where they came from?
Jesus. It felt right to
Different class.
different class.
Yeah. Different class.
Oh, grief. Sorry.
No.
No, Mom, I don't know the history.
Well, there was a doctor. Her name was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. You probably heard that name.
Yeah.
And she was doing research on cancer patients. And she found in her research that all cancer patients went through 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
So she wrote a book about it, The 5 Stages of Grief, for those going through cancer.
And what are the 5 stages?
And you can remember them with an acronym. It's DABDA. First stage is denial. Second one is anger. Third one is bargaining. Fourth one is sadness. And the 5th one is acceptance.
Wow.
But I'm going to introduce a 6th one.
Okay.
But I'll hold that one for a minute.
So it's DABSA. DABSA. Well, would you say sadness?
DABSA.
depression.
DABSA.
DABSA. Yeah.
Actually, Kubler-Ross said denial, anger, bargaining, depression.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I don't use that because depression is a clinical term and it's really not the same as grief.
Right.
Grief is
Yeah,
one
that makes
thing,
sense.
depression is another. Now, you can be depressed in grief, but depression is a whole slew of clinical
Of other
symptoms.
things.
Yeah.
And it is not grief.
So somebody asked me yesterday that knows some of my journey right now. they said, "How are you?" And I'm like, "I think I'm in like a mild depression." But would you say? I mean, I'm actually okay. I don't think this is a clinical thing. I'm just I'm really sad.
Yeah.
My heart is really sad and angry at certain things. And so, would you say it's more of a mild sadness?
Yeah, I think you're in grief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We say depression sets in after about 2 years of being under constant stress, tension, pressure, terrible things going on. I'm just talking clinically because
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
from a clinical background, but so I don't like to use a clinical term when we should use
Totally.
the word
No,
sadness.
that makes a ton of sense.
I
Yeah.
actually really love that. Yeah.
So,
and almost
go ahead. Yeah.
it's almost more beautiful. Like that is actually more beautiful for my heart to say I'm just sad instead of depressed. Feels a little bit more removed.
Yeah.
I don't know why that kind of hits me in a different way, but I feel I feel really sad, and that actually attaches to my emotions more than
That's
mild
right.
depression does.
That's right.
Yeah,
Because depression is just a whole syndrome of clinical symptoms, but you have something you're sad about.
yeah, right.
So to go back through 'em. Denial is a normal reaction to rationalize overwhelming emotions.
A normal reaction to
A normal
rationalize.
reaction to rationalize overwhelming emotions. So if something very bad happens, or something even a little bit bad happens. I lost my keys just before I was ready to go to church yesterday, and I was supposed to be there for something, and I totally lost. I couldn't walk out the door. I first of all, they have to be here. I'm in denial.
Yeah, right.
Then I'm angry. I had those keys. Where are they? I'm so mad.
Yeah,
Then I'm bargaining. If only I could remember exactly when I had them and where I could have put them down. And then sadness. They're not here. I'm bummed. I got to call them and tell them
Yeah.
I'll be late.
right,
And acceptance. Okay, the keys are gone. Do you have another set? Yes, I have another set. Acceptance.
right, right.
Yeah.
Even in
Just
in that
in that
small
little
thing,
tiny-
losing your keys. Okay, so as we start diving into rethinking the word grief for the next 2 episodes, let's just take a moment and make a mental note or a literal list of a few things that have not gone our way in the past, present, and future. What has been lost, or is in the process of being lost, or might you potentially lose in the future? It might be a job, or it's a certain status, or an identity. It might be a thing, it might be people or relationships. What have you lost?
So, it's helpful to understand the 5 stages because you can say, okay, I guess I'm in bargaining. Or it's fair for me to be in anger. I'm angry about this situation. That's
Is there like a typical time that people stay in any of these phases, like
great
denial? I could imagine like grief, or even if you stayed where you are for so long, it becoming depression if we deny long enough.
That's right. That's right. It's exactly right. And of course, the length that we stay depends on a lot of factors. The seriousness of the loss, the stability of our own self. If I'm used to living in reality, then it's going to be hard for me to deal with reality. How the people around me are responding, all kinds of factors. I'll say this, it's linear in the sense that we go from denial to anger to bargaining to sadness to acceptance. But it's not linear in the sense that we go from denial to anger to denial,
Yeah.
anger, bargaining, anger, denial, bargaining.
Yeah.
So, once we've started on the journey, we can go back and forth and do more of whatever it is we haven't fully done yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that in some of my journey where it's like, I thought I actually accepted this
Right.
Yeah.
at some point.
Right.
And then come back and like, wow, maybe I didn't. Or it hits you from a different angle.
That's too real.
Well, and you probably did accept whatever it was, but there was more acceptance to do.
Yeah.
That's
that's
the
right.
point. So don't feel bad if you think you've already come to acceptance and you go back and do some more denial. Okay, let's pick it up. Pick it up and do it.
Yeah.
Does grief ever love me through this question? Does grief ever end I mean, is this just new pathways, grieving a certain thing? Do you ever stop the grieving process?
Excellent question, my dear. We say, we say true grief resolves. Maybe it doesn't end, it resolves.
Yeah.
There is such a thing as morbid grief. And clinically, it's called complicated bereavement. And, clinically, after 2 years, if someone is just still in a pile and they can't get out of their grief, then we're going to say, well, I think it might even be complicated bereavement. It might be, more serious. But and I'll use the example of my dad. My dad has been gone 40 years this year.
Wow.
There are times when I am thinking about my family, and Tim, I'm thinking about the grandchildren, and I'm thinking, I wish they knew Daddy. I wish they knew my dad.
Yeah.
Or if I'm talking to somebody in a session, and I start to tear up over my dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but my grief over my father is resolved. I don't wear it on my sleeve. But when it comes up, I do it.
Right.
And I cry. I let myself cry. Why not?
Yep.
He was wonderful.
Yeah.
I loved
Yep.
him. And he was a
Yeah.
great influence in my life. And I wouldn't be who I am without him. And all of that. So true grief resolves. We come to a place of resolve. But that doesn't mean that it's totally over and we never grieve that person again. Or, I'm done grieving. And think of it as a journey. It's a journey. It's not a destination.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Okay. Now what makes sense?
Even with your dad, that you still cry with your dad. I mean, you and I will talk about your dad, and you will move to tears at a moment's notice. And is it just become this soft sadness at the end of it?
That's
Is
a good
that-
way to put it.
I mean, I feel like that's where it is with you. There's not this anger or, I don't see any of those pieces of the stages of grief other than just a sadness and a love. And I mean, it's really beautiful how you love your dad and even mourn over your dad.
Yeah, I wonder if that's almost honoring and like celebrating the goodness of it. Whether it's a person or a situation, when you're grieving, it's because you've obviously lost something that like meant something to you. And so when we come back to that, even over years, and can like grieve it again, it's like, wow, this was really special. I guess maybe the idea is, can we do that without losing everything else and losing our minds in the middle of it?
Yes, and that's the hope, isn't it? Isn't that great?
Yeah.
That we can grieve and we can cry and then we can pick up and go on.
Yeah. And by actually doing it, by you saying, I'm going to feel these feelings about my dad now, it's actually honoring
Yes,
the experience instead of pushing
That's
it away
right.
and denying it.
that's right.
Well, what's that sixth Dabs?
All right, I'm
Dabs
just going to read
good.
through the
Hold
five.
on. Do you guys have a thought of the letter that it's going to be? Is it going to be? Is it at the end, Mom? Dabs.
No. It'd be a surprise. It'll be a surprise.
Is it?
T. I'm saying it's a T.
It's a T.
Rebalance.
Let's go.
Is it? No,
Let's
no.
go.
I want to see
Okay.
if I get it right.
All right, so
Okay.
denial. Now, anger is, as the numbness wears off of the pain of loss, anger takes hold. And that's when we start to blame. We blame ourselves. We blame others. We lash out, whatever. The bargaining part is when we say, if only. And that's the what ifs. And that helps us. It's a temporary coping mechanism from the pain. We've been in denial, been angry, and it's exhausting. So we start in on bargaining. Well, if you would have, if I would have, if they would have, why didn't you? Well, how could you not? And it gives the person sort of a time to adjust to the reality of the situation by bargaining.
Do you see people spiraling here? I know in some of the things that I've gone through, I feel like, and maybe this isn't bargaining, tell me if it is, like I will go uber into details. I need to know everything around this and like understand it. But really I'm just spiraling into this like never ending abyss of, filling my mind with useless information.
Well, I would rather have you see it as a coping mechanism. Just like I said, it's a temporary escape from the pain.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a better way to say it. That's right.
And it appears to provide an explanation or a hope of some kind. Doesn't
Yeah.
really, but
Yeah.
when you ask someone who's lost someone close to them, they want to tell you all the details. Well, this happened, and then that happened, and then they did this, and then all of us didn't know what to do, and then so they
Right.
want to tell the story over and over and over again because it's a way of going, wait a minute, it really happened, didn't it? Didn't it really happen?
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, the bargaining, if onlys, last a long time for most people. Most people say, well, I just don't understand. I don't know why it had to happen or why this was or how did it, why didn't some other people, why didn't the doctors, well, they should have. And I can't believe I did, It's a long stage.
Yeah. That's right.
Then the fourth one is the sadness that I was talking about, and not to be mixed up with depression. It's an appropriate response to a great loss. That's sadness.
Sadness is.
It's an appropriate response to a great loss, or whatever.
So we shouldn't be afraid of it.
No,
Yeah.
we have to do it. If we don't do it, it will come out again. It will surface over and over again.
Any other stages, or just
Just in
it'll
your life.
surface?
The sadness will, yes, it'll come out in anger. It'll come out in denial. It'll come, we need
Yeah.
to do our sadness.
And this maybe is the part where you feel like you've tried to do that with grace, the sadness part.
I think all of it, really. The more I listen to the way, Carol, you're explaining things, the more it's about permission. And that's been a big
Yes,
part of my
yes.
life. Like, I didn't feel like I had permission to be that angry or that sad or permission to even ask for things. So my life has been very much a bargain. Like, everything I do is like settling. So it's so much more of like, I'm not going to ask for much, so death isn't around the corner again. Like it's not so much that I didn't feel it, it's that I didn't feel like I had permission to be so angry because my parents reacted differently, or my community felt uncomfortable with how sad I was. So it's just all those stages, really.
Boy, I've heard that before. I listen to these things, and I've heard you say that before, and I've thought that you were trying to be very, very brave, and maybe trying to be very spiritual
Yeah.
with the situation.
Yeah, I think I was trying to, and the part where you're saying that grief resolves, I think I was trying to find the redemption in grief instead of just being what it is.
Right.
Wow.
And like, God is in that, instead of like, where's the testimony? Where's
Right.
where's the
Yes.
point? So I can say it was worth feeling so
We're trying
crappy.
to skip some steps to get
Totally.
to the resolution of it.
Yeah, and being a worship leader and a mentor, I felt the pressure to be like, and then for my parents to be the only one left. So for them to like just check out, I was like, how do I do all of this at 22?
Yes.
Wow.
But even now I'm like, man, it's every day it's about permission.
I think that's an
me.
excellent way to look at it, because you didn't give your self permission to grieve. And sometimes it takes a long time to really assimilate that permission to grieve. I had an experience when I was early marriage, early 20s. My closest friend growing up, my childhood friend, Janice, died of leukemia. And I was married and couldn't go back for the service. And so I grieved alone. I did my best. I wrote her mother a letter. I, went over how good of friends we were and how I loved her. And I knew she was with the Lord, and on and on. And, in my mind, I had grieved. But 20 years later, I saw the movie Beaches. And
Oh boy.
I don't know if everybody understands the movie Beaches, but it was about two women who were very close friends, and I totally identified with that movie. And in that movie, the quiet girl passed away, and the loud one lived. Bette Midler was the sort of loud, in-your-face person.
Yeah.
Well, it was the opposite with Janice and me. I was the quiet one. She was the upfront. She was going to be a doctor. She was a leader. She was just had the best grades. She was everything. And so in my mind, it was so totally twisted around. And when I got home from that movie, I sobbed for an entire hour. I couldn't get my breath. I was grieving Janice because I thought, why did I live and she died?
Yeah.
And I had to make sense of it. I had to do my bargaining and make sense of it. So every year on her birthday, I celebrate her birthday. And I thank the Lord for allowing me to live and to let me be in place of her as well. So, I had to make sense of it somehow. But 20 years of not really understanding that I hadn't fully grieved.
Wow.
Wow.
So
I've got a couple
Yes.
questions, and that you can get to or not. I wonder, we talked so much like about faith on this thing, and one question, you can answer these however you want, is do you find a faith angle to be helpful in this, or can it be both helpful and hurtful for some people? Like what Moy is saying, it's like I tried to jump to like the God is good, and it made me skip all these steps. And then, gosh, what was my second question?
That's a great question, Chris.
We can let's
Sure.
start with that one, and
Well,
I think
about
through another.
who we know Jesus is. He is a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief.
Wow.
Isn't that wonderful that we're told that? He knows us. He knows us intimately. We are his children. He doesn't want us to be fake. He wants us to be real. He understands grief. As a matter of fact, he went through terrible grief and sadness as he was dying on the cross, and he asked his friends to just kind of come and hold his hand, and they fell asleep.
Yeah.
He understands.
I mean, what if Jesus actually understands our grief? I mean, I know it's such a Christian thing to say that he walks with us and he talks with us, but like, what if he actually understands our grief and wants to walk with us in it and restore us through it? This week, I'd love for us to even just start rethinking this idea of grief. Like, there are huge things that maybe we need to rethink and relook at our grieving process on. So if that's the case, who would you want to do that with? Who is somebody safe, whether it's a therapist or whether it's just a friend? Who's somebody that you could walk through this process with? And on the other side of this, there are so many little things that happen all week long that I think I don't grieve well. And then I don't think we as a people grieve well. And after a while, these things seem to build up and then actually cause resentment. And generally, at some point, they catch up with us. So this week, let's practice being aware of the things that we might need to begin a grieving process with. And remember, as we grieve and walk through this stuff, we're going to do this with Jesus. We decided to split up this podcast because next week, we're going to look at how to walk with others in their grief, and then how do we walk with Jesus in our grief. You're going to want to jump in next week with us. It's so good. You guys, I'm so thankful for you. I'm so thankful to walk through this with you. If you want to get a few encouraging texts, please text 10K, 10K to the number 55678, or just go to 10,000minutes.com and check out all the different resources there. And if you guys want to give, that would be amazing too, because we'd love to continue doing this. Thanks, you guys.